Aloha! Today is Thursday, March 19th, 2020, and sometime today, the Hawaiian governor issued the proclamation decree that starting tomorrow at 7:45 a.m. we are not supposed to go anywhere non-essential. So I've been hearing from a lot of people on the continent, especially California, who've already living that way, and what they're telling me is that they still need to move, and walking is becoming their friend. So I love to walk. I encourage everyone to walk a lot, as much as possible, everyone who can walk, to be able to do it. And so today I'm going to share with you some things that you could do in walking clothes, like not super tight pants, but walking clothes, that you can do as a way to prepare for going on a walk, to do as a regular practice because you want to do more walking, or even something you can do after you've gone for a walk. Or some of these you can just stop in the middle and do them while you're in the middle of a walk. And those of you who have been with me for a while will not be surprised that one of the first things is to take your feet a little bit wider than hips distance and start to circle your hips round and round. Femur bone, biggest joint in our body. We need it to walk, so having more mobility there makes walking a lot more pleasant. All right, go ahead and switch directions. So having mobility in the hips, in the ankles and knees, and actually in the shoulder joints, actually having mobility in a lot of your joints makes walking easier. Let's go back the first side. And the other thing for walking that we really want to be able to do is to recruit a wide variety of muscles. So many of us tend to have habitual muscles that we use and others that are a little sleepy. So a practice to be better at walking, I guess it's possible, it is possible to be better at walking, can include waking up some of the muscles as well. And more specifically, muscles of the back body, especially the lower back body, because many of us, from our habit of chairs, some of you've heard this many times, we tend to stand like a banana. I'm exaggerating, but pelvis is forward, and then when we do this, we tend to throw our legs forward and use the muscles in the front and not as much in the back. So how do we wake these muscles up in the back? One way is we practice Tadasana, noticing where we are, how we are standing. So I recommend checking it out if you have a mirror or even a window that you can look at with the right reflection, to come into mountain pose and notice what your average normal stance is. I know that's hard to do, but play with that. And then what we're looking for to creating ultimately is a position where the lower ribs, lower front ribs, hip points, and pubic bone line up with each other. And for more on that, I've talked about that more in other videos and more detail. You can also ask me, of course. But that's what we want to play with in mountain pose, hips above the heels. Now for many of us that feels very strange. It might actually feel like you're rounding forward. And a good way to actually build that, one of the things that's super tight when we do that is our calves. So I'm going to ask you to do a calf stretch and come into that same position. And with the calf stretch, you can use a block. You could use a stair. This stair is a little bit high, and you can't really see my foot in it, so I'm going to use a block. But anything, if you're on the street, actually calf stretches are a great thing to do while you're walking. Just take a break and stretch your calf. So you're going to place your foot on the block and stand with your hips over your heels, just like we did before, as much as possible. If you find this feels a little precarious, grab onto something and hold it there. Breathe a few times. If you find you're not feeling a stretch, take the opposite leg further forward. When I first started doing this, my leg was further back. Now I can take my opposite leg further forward, almost to the point where I can take it in front of the other foot. Right. And then go ahead, release. We'll do the other side. I'll show you what it looks like forward. Take the ball of your foot on the block, heel on the ground. Begin to walk the opposite foot forward. Mountain pose, spine nice and long. few breaths. And then release. You may find when you do this that now, just doing the calf stretch, it's a little bit easier to stand with your hips back over your heels. There's a little more length in the calves that helps support you when you do this. For those of you who find this, you understand this in your body, the next step is to notice if you're gripping your quads. And you can't see in my pants right now, but many of us, when we stand when we try to stand backwards, we start gripping the muscles above the knees. Now, in a lot of Iyengar yoga classes, other yoga classes, they actually say draw up on the muscles in the knees, which is a fine thing to do, but many of us do it way too much of the time. So when you're in mountain pose, try to let go of the muscles above the knees. That can be very hard to find. So the first step I recommend is engaging the muscles above the knees and then let them go. And again, engage the muscles of the knees, let them go. One more time, engage the muscles of the knees and let them go. Now, if you find that really hard to do while standing, you can always lean against a wall. So this is something you can practice when you're like hanging out. You can lean against the wall, engage. You can't see me here, but you get the idea. I mean, you can see me, but you can't see the knees going up and down. Okay. So after you've done that, let's come back to the hip circles. Round and round 3 times to the right and 3 times to the left. And one of the things that affects the movement of the hips a lot is the feet. And so we're going to do just a few things to get the feet a little more awake and aware. One is to open up the tops of the feet. So again, you may want to have something to balance on. This is also a great thing to do before you put your shoes on. It's hard to do in most shoes. Take the top of your foot back, press the top of the foot onto the ground, and maybe stay here or maybe bend the knee up and down a few times so you feel a stretch at the top of the foot. If it's too intense, you can take a block and make the intensity just a little bit less. If you put your foot on the block, you can control the intensity a little bit more. So go ahead and second side, up and down. It's an area of the body we tend not to move a lot, but when we walk, that part of the body, if it doesn't move, we kind of clunk when we walk as opposed to being able to be a little more smooth. Let's come back to the first side. This time, we'll rainbow it a little, which means tilt your heel out to the side. So your right heel goes out to the side. So you're going to get a little bit different angle at the foot. And then maybe bend the knee up and down a few times. And then second side. Up and down a few times. And then last but not least, do the same thing by taking the heel towards center, lateral. So you're on the top of the foot more, the big toe coming down. As you do that, encourage the top of the thigh to lengthen. And then second side. And then release, wiggle your toes, lift your toes, come back into mountain pose, bring your toes down, and then take your right foot forward, come onto the ball of your foot, and then we're going to circle the ankle. So you may notice that when I circle the ankle, my leg is circling a little bit, but I'm really trying to get the movements from the ankle, and then go the other direction. And then release, and second side. So that when you're walking, your foot is moving more freely. And then switch directions. So all of these things I'm doing, you could do just one of them. You could stop in the middle of a walk. You could do one of them before you go for a walk. You can do a few of them together. Like right now, after I did those ankle circles, I'm now going to circle round my ankles. So not hip circles. My hips are staying steady, but I'm circling around. This is actually quite challenging. Many of us don't have a lot of mobility in the ankles. And then go the other way. I find I need to really engage my belly when I do this. All right, and then release, and then circle your shoulders around a few times. Another aspect of walking is the arm swing. Very, 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 very important. And often when the shoulders are tight, it's hard to swing the arms. So a few more circles. And then from standing, go ahead and roll your arms in internally and externally. So you're moving from the shoulder joint back and forth. I'm just pointing out where the movement's from. You can do both sides at the same time, or you can do one side. And then come back to mountain pose. Remember, hips over heels. And in mountain pose, reach your fingertips down strongly. Lift your spine up. And then just rock your arms a little soft forward and back, just a little bit. And notice, do they go straight or do they kind of go sideways? So if they go sideways, that's because your shoulder blades. I don't have the mobility right now to go forward. So we're working towards having the arms go forward, which creates a full movement in the shoulder joint. If you find that your elbows bend a lot when you walk, that's probably because also the shoulder joint is not really, doesn't have a lot of mobility, so the mobility is coming into the elbow instead. So those shoulder circles, a few more round and round. And then the rotation, external, internal, external, internal. And then back into mountain pose, hips over heels. And feel your shoulder blades. So firm the shoulder blades down the back. That's one of the reasons why cactus pose can really help. So come up as a cactus. Take a nice breath. Turn your head to the right. Look at the elbow. Back to center. Turn your head to the left. Back to center. Reach the elbows wide just so you can feel a little bit more up in the shoulder blades. Then release. And now when you walk, just having a little more awareness, or when you swing your arms, a little more awareness of the back body. Back and forth. Okay, so those are some very key mobility moves. I'm going to roll your shoulders again for walking. And now let's do a little bit more to wake up some of the muscles. Along with standing with the hips over the heels, there's a number of different exercises we can do to wake up some of the gluteal muscles. One of them requires some balance. So if you don't feel comfortable balancing on a block, stand by a wall or get a ledge. We're going to come back into mountain pose on a block. And just hold the position. Encourage your feet to stay parallel and the same height. I'm trying to help you wake up that outer hip. Sometimes I'll just do this on a curb when I'm feeling that my gait is a little imbalanced, because I definitely have one side that's weaker than the other, and sometimes it feels really sleepy. So I'll stop in the middle of my walk and do a few things to wake up this area, and then go on my way. And if you find balance really precarious, you can always put your opposite toe down. All right, and then release. Take the leg you're just standing on, keep it on the block, rock it a little in and out. You may feel a little tension there. All right, and then switch sides. So come onto your left leg and stand on up, mountain pose. Breathe. can play with the mountain, still even on one leg, hips over heels. So notice if you start to banana, because this is harder than doing it on 2 legs. If you find that you've got the balance going, you can play with the shoulder blades being firm. Woohoo! You might add rotation of the arms in and out a little. And then come down and rock the left leg a little in and out. So I'm hoping you're feeling a little bit of engagement here. Let's build on that. Take your feet a little bit wide on the hips distance. Oh, actually hips distance apart. And now we're going to work on a movement that helps the leg come forward. And we're going to go side to side. So bring your hands on your hips so you can feel this. What I'd like you to do, excuse me, someone's walking by and smoking. I'm outside, but the street is on the other side of this. Okay, sorry about that. So we're going to shift your weight onto your right leg. As you do that, slide your right hip down to lift your left leg hip up. Come back down, go through center and the other direction. Hip comes down, and the standing leg to lift the hip on the other leg. So we're going side to side. This is also just a great practice to do when you've got a few minutes or a few seconds even. Talking on the phone, waiting for the tea to boil. All right, and then release with a few hip circles. One direction and the other direction. One more of these moves. Now, stand on your block, and this I do on the curb all the time. Stand with your left foot on the block. This is particularly for the right side of the body. So once you find that balance, and you may find this easier actually, sometimes just staying still is harder. With your hand on the side muscle, begin to circle your leg. As you circle it, there'll be certain places where you can actually squeeze it a little bit more. So go ahead and do that. Get a nice squeeze on. And then switch directions. You can change a little the angle of where the leg is, if it's in front, if it's crossed over, a little to the side. I particularly find doing it with the circling leg a little bit behind the standing leg really challenging and good practice for me. And you also, you're using the other leg to stabilize, so you may get a little fatigued. Give a little shake and shimmy. And go back to or come to the other side. Stand on the right leg and circling the left thigh. The left leg around. And then switch directions. Good, and then release. Put the block off to the side, another shake and shimmy. And then, what I'd like you to do is take your right foot forward, your left foot stays back. And then just shift your weight onto the right foot by lifting the left heel. As you do that, press down with the base of your toes. And you might feel some engagement in actually your big buttocks muscle, which is the gluteus maximus, as you come forward and then come back. So encourage that action. Come onto the ball of toes, squeeze, come back. Again, come onto the ball of your toes, squeeze, come back. 2 more times on this side. Good. And then go ahead and switch sides. Take your left foot forward, right hand on the buttocks, come forward and squeeze. Another thing, especially if we are walking without a lot of people around in our, social distancing, we wind up being able to do all sorts of interesting things, I suppose. All right, but if you're walking around, if there's enough people walking around with their hands on their butts, maybe it'll become a trend that will be acceptable. But for now, you know, do it at home, see how it goes. All right, so now one more piece to walking that I want to share today is to combine that use of the big muscle from behind with the side muscle. So what we're going to do to play with it is to shift your weight forward, press off the back of your left foot, and then take your right hip down to bring your left foot forward, and then take your right hip down to bring your left foot back. So you're not going to do the backward part in a real walk, but it's a good practice for getting the movement of the up and down, so that when we walk, we want to be able to have that engagement in the back muscles when we push off. But when we swing forward, a lot of the movement, the strength comes from these muscles here that help lift the leg up, create space for the leg to lift up as it pushes forward with momentum. So I know for some of you, you may not have ever broken walking down like to this amount of detail, and you wonder, how can I remember all of these things while I'm walking? Start with one, and then it's just like learning to do this, right? You put the pieces together. Ooh, something happened to the light. All right, we're almost done. Second side. Back and forth. So push off with the back, press down with the left hip to lift the leg up. And then release, roll your shoulders around a few times. Take your feet. Let's come back to the hip circles. Always come back to hip circles, round and round. And a few shoulder circles. Back to center. Stand with your hips over your heels, mountain pose. Breathing, shoulder blades down the back. So right now, after doing this practice, I really don't feel like doing Shavasana. I feel like going for a walk. So what I'm going to suggest is, for those of you who are doing this as a stay-at-home practice, I don't have the light now, but I recommend you do Supta Padangusthasana, which is a reclined pose where you hold the strap up, and then do a twist, and then Shavasana. Or go out for a walk right now. One of those two things. And try to integrate one or two of the things you've experienced today while you're walking or before you're walking. And during this time, may you be able to take some really good walks, and may you be healthy and safe and have time to be with your loved ones. Please let me know if you have any questions or any requests, because I will be happy to share what I can with you all. Aloha, namaste, mahalo.